Well, thanks everyone. So now to move back to the kind of things that we are advocating on this month, specifically. Now, as you all know, we're advocating for several very effective multilateral bodies to be funded this year, organisations that you know and love. And this is made harder, as you know, by the ODA cuts, but they remain essential to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's where we are. In a few minutes, I see he's not here yet, but we are going to hear from a speaker about the replenishment process, which is imminent. I say imminent, but sometime later this year. We don't have an exact date for the Global Fund to fight HIV, TB, and malaria, something that obviously all of you and Results generally has become an expert in over many years. Personally, I've worked on the replenishments of the Global Fund since 2016, and each time, and some of you have probably been doing it longer than that, and each time we do it, I am reminded of the incredible work of that organisation, saving millions of lives, giving hope, and giving practical treatments to people who would otherwise not be able to access their right to health. At this stage, we don't have a figure for the amount that we think we're going to be asking the UK government to contribute for the next 3 years in the fight against those three diseases. We hope that together with other civil society organisations, we'll be able to come up with a sensible ask, a sensible request, given the UK situation. We are supposed to be hearing from the government on the 11th of June about the results of their spending review, which they've been conducting for several months now. And this should show in broad terms how much the government has got to spend on things like global health. And that should help us decide, will it affect how much money is allocated to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, for example, which is going to be, its replenishment is now later this month. That was actually postponed from earlier in the year, as well as to the Global Fund later in the year. So this is exactly the right time to be making the case for investing in global health, as we will hopefully shortly hear from our speaker. I would also like to just mention our last month's action. Thank you for everyone who's been able to take that on financing for development. So that idea that really, if we're going to make a big difference to countries' ability to overcome poverty and to pursue their own development priorities, it's not just ODA, but far more than that, including being able to raise their own resources internally. I've just put the link in the chat again to that action. You all have had that by email. It continues to be important, and the Financing for Development conference, which we're still hoping to be able to influence the UK government on. We've not heard a great deal from them, if anything, actually, about their priorities, but we hope that they will be taking that process very seriously in parallel to whatever they may be able to do on ODA. And nevertheless, ODA is what we think we call transformational. It helps countries really kickstart things. And when ODA is delivered correctly, it can actually help countries align things like the reliable support that can come from a multilateral health agency like the Global Fund to their own health systems, their own health priorities, and expand their health budgets. So that's kind of the two stools, I suppose, we're on at the moment with the ODA and really looking beyond ODA to help get a more just and fair world. So before I introduce our speaker, and I hope he will join very soon, I want to go to the bit of the call where we hear about what you're doing around the UK. And the first thing I want to do is to congratulate the Pool Group for your plant sale on the 17th of May, which raised over £300 for Results work, I believe. Thank you very, very much to all of you. And I hope you had a really great day. Would anyone from the group like to describe what happened and how it went?
Shall I have a go?
Please.
Well, we were a great little team, and in fact we did it for two charities, not just Results, but Spreading Health, which is a little charity set up in Bournemouth by Glynis and Peter, who are also on this call. And their charity does fundraising to support the training of state-registered nurses in Cameroon. So two organisations working for similar ends, but in different ways. We had plants, we had books, and it was a lovely day, so we had cakes and coffee in the garden, and it was a very sociable event as well, and we all had a good time.
Thank you, Deirdre. That's really important these days, isn't it? Actually getting together and being together for a project. Anyone else want to say anything about that?
Just that Deirdre does all the work, really. She does all the preparation and she's very good at it.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Deirdre, and everybody else in the group who contributed. I know it's a big team effort, and also congratulations to Glynis and Peter for your work as well, and everyone in the group. So this kind of fundraising, it's really important as it helps Results fund things that we can't easily get funded by the foundations that we apply to for, on the work on the specific issues that we work on, like health and education. Next, I wanted to thank everybody who took part in the recent ODA Lobby Day in Westminster. So that was the 20th of May. A number of Results volunteers joined a whole load of other campaigners in Westminster. Does anyone who was there, I don't know if we've got anyone on the call who was there. Does anyone want to say anything about it?
Yes, we met our MP in Parliament and got to sit on the terrace with him and spend nearly an hour talking about general things and ODA. I think he might be one of the ones who is supportive but didn't rebel. Didn't say so directly, but he's also an MP who didn't expect to be an MP, so he's feeling his way a little bit. But he has actually been putting in quite a few written questions on the effects of the development cuts, particularly with links to Malawi that Scotland has. So he's been asking quite specific questions on that. So yeah, a very long day, but worth going.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, long trip for you. And Corinne, I noticed that you snuck into the picture on the terrace. Is that right?
I took the picture on the terrace.
Oh, I thought you were in the picture.
No, it was Karen and Ricky and their MP. I met my MP in the morning, and he too is one of the new intake of Labour MPs, and he's only 25. He listened very carefully. He's always given me the party line. But I think this is one of the cases, as Lucy said, and as you said earlier, it's just a case of keeping up the communication and trying to get other people to communicate to him. But I was trying to encourage him that if he wanted to find out more, then Results were always happy for to communicate with MPs. But I thought it was really worthwhile and to be built on, let us say.
Thanks, Corinne. I think. Oh, go ahead, Richard.
I was there. My MP couldn't make it. He apologised, but it was a good day because we had different talks in the morning, and then went to Parliament. And then, so my MP actually emailed and apologised, but I fixed up a phone call with him on Thursday. He's giving me 10 minutes, so I've got to bend his ear for 10 minutes on Thursday.
Fantastic. Always great to follow that up if you don't get the meeting there and then. So yeah, good luck on Thursday, Richard. That's amazing. I see our speakers arrived, so I will just have a couple of quick updates, and then we'll introduce him. So firstly, some of you have signed up to our summer gathering. So that's the 22nd of June. I'm just going to put a link in the chat for anyone who hasn't and wants to. And we also now have a venue, which is called the Africa Centre. It is just south of a few minutes walk south of the South Bank Centre in Southwark. And I haven't been there myself, but I'm told it's a really relaxed venue with lots of space that we can use and kind of relax in. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then the next thing, and I think the last thing I need to mention before I introduce our speaker, is another lobby day, this time on the subject of debt. So again, an issue we've started to campaign on in recent months. So the Debt Justice Campaign has organised this lobby day to highlight the concerns about the growing debt burden of many countries that just prevent essential social services such as health and education being afforded by many countries. So this aligns very well to our campaigning we've done on debt in relation to nutrition and in relation to education. And so please do consider signing on to that event if you can. The link again in the chat, it's a landing page where you can register your interest. There's some training that you can sign up to on the 11th of June and the 2nd of July, I believe, in the evening. So there's quite a lot going on that's being organised by the Debt Justice Campaign there. And so now it is time for me to introduce our speaker, and we're very, very happy to be joined by Fitsum Alamahayu. Welcome, Fitsum. Fitsum is... Hi, Fitsum. Good to have you with us. I should say it's really quite late in the evening where Fitsum is. He's in Addis Ababa. So we will definitely not keep him past the end of this call, but let him get away. So Fitsum is the liaison manager to the African Union Commission at an organisation called WACI Health, which is, that's WACI Health, which is a Pan-African health advocacy organisation that is actually a partner of Results UK as part of the Action Global Health Advocacy Network, or ACTION for short. And Fitsum coordinates the African Civil Society Platform for Health. So Fitsum, very happy to see you and call, and thank you for being with us. Let me start by introducing you, all the people we've got on this call. As well as a few staff members, we also have volunteer advocates from right around the UK who are all acting in solidarity with people around the world, aiming to achieve a more equal world for all, free of poverty. We're all very excited to hear what you've got to say, and I know people will be keen to ask you some questions about the importance of the Global Fund for improving health outcomes in African countries. But before we go into our questions, and as usual, we've got three pre-prepared questions for you, would you be able to spend a minute or two just introducing yourself, how you got involved in health advocacy, and a little bit about your work with WACI Health and the African Union?
Great. Thank you very much, Naveed. And also, I would like to apologize for joining late. My computer decided to update itself at a very rude timing. So unfortunately, yeah, I joined a bit late. I'm very glad to see you all. The name is Fitsum Alamahayu. I work with WACI Health as the African Union Liaison Manager. I also coordinate the African Civil Society Platform for Health. I've been working with WACI Health for about 6 years now with this position. Before that, I was also leading a research portfolio for a policy think tank, which I was also supporting WACI Health and also CISPA, the Civil Society Platform. That's how I got connected to WACI Health. So it kind of explains the entry point to health. Just before that, still we are still working on policy issues, especially actually the policy think tank was the first to come up with the Africa Scorecard on Domestic Financing for Health, which I was leading that project. Eventually, AU surprised us with that scorecard before we launched ours. So I still have that old Excel version of the Africa Scorecard, which is very much comprehensive actually from the one we had now. So that's how I joined WACI Health and also into the health space. So at WACI Health, we do policy advocacy primarily, especially looking into HIV, HTB, malaria response, and also adding pandemic preparedness to it. And also recently looking into the interconnection of climate change and also health. We're kind of also branching out to climate change and trying to also have that interlinked approach, whereby when we're talking about health system, we're very much also conscious of climate change. Within our policy advocacy, we very much center our approach on community engagement, whereby we do most of our engagement and facilitations with civil society and communities. So with any regional or global process, we do a wide civil society consultation on the existing policy frameworks, tools, and to make sure at least there is that convergence between the high-level political commitment and the needs of communities at grassroots. At the same time, we also bring those policy instruments back to civil society and communities and kind of create that platform for discussion. In short, thank you, Naveed.
Thank you, Fitsum. I think what you said really speaks to Results' approach, which is to link people's voices, grassroots communities, through to high-level policy and through to what governments are doing. I really liked what you were saying about scorecards. It's another classic tool that we use to kind of rate governments and hold them to account for things that they're doing or not, and other institutions as well, that they may not be living up to their their stated standards. So we're really always very happy to be working in partnership with Wacky Health and some of our other African partners.
Like,
I'm going to head over to our first our pre-prepared questions now, which Fitsum has seen in the usual way. So the first one, I think, is from Stork Valley Group. So over to you guys. Oh, Corinne, you're on mute if you're...
Sorry, got carried away. Fitsum, thank you very much for joining us. And it's really interesting to hear about your work. It sounds like a really challenging role. I wanted to ask you why you feel the Global Fund is so important for fighting HIV, TB and malaria and for improving health around the world.
thank you very much, Corinne. A very important question to answer, especially for those of us who are in this health space. The Global Fund, as the name implies, there is a sense of solidarity to it in terms of addressing HIV, TB, malaria. And for quite so long in Africa, there were challenges in terms of addressing this gap, especially in terms of addressing the inequalities that existed in terms of having access to healthcare, having access to the medical diagnostic tools, having access to so many other underlying, in fact, even going to as getting access to health facilities in some communities, in some areas. And the disproportionate also arrangement of health professional workers and also health facilities was also another challenge. However, when the Global Fund came in 2002, this has been very much averted in a way. For example, since 2002, the Global Fund has saved more than 44 million lives. And also has helped in terms of decreasing disease incidences by 46%, especially in low and middle income countries since 2002. So the importance is that for HIV, TB, malaria, and also for health system strengthening, definitely the Global Fund is a vital financing instrument in supporting governments to address the gaps that exist in their health systems. By doing so, what also makes the Global Fund a unique financing facility is that it very much builds on community participation and community needs. It very much looks into vulnerable groups and also to make sure there is inclusivity and there is equity in terms of addressing these challenges. If there is no equity in health systems, if there is no equity in terms of reaching out to the key and vulnerable population, then at the end of the day, we will be back to square one. And such global approaches, such global solidarity have very much helped in terms of addressing missing cases, in terms of addressing those hard to reach and such. The other importance is that there has been also a financial and technical gap on the continent to address these three diseases. And this has very much helped in terms of strengthening health systems, in terms of capacitating health workforce, and in terms of also, at the end of the day, ensuring regional approaches. For example, the Africa Scorecard, which I mentioned to you earlier, is a result of the support from the Global Fund, which Africa has now a continental scorecard on domestic financing for health, which is a very important political instrument in terms of addressing the political commitment of the 55 countries on the continent. So in short, it's very important. It remains to be important moving forward, and very much so also bringing global solidarity. Disease knows no border, and also global solidarity will very much play important role in moving forward. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Fitsum. That's really helpful to understand.
Thank you.
I really like that that clarity there about the external support to achieving equity in the across the region, and also the technical support and bringing the region together. That feels really, really powerful. I'm sure we'll delve more into this in the questions later, but let's move on to the second preset question, which is, I think, from the Cheshire Group.
Yes, thanks, Naveed. Hello, Fitsum. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Our question is, how does the approach of the Global Fund help countries achieve improvements to health?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Very much so, there is a systemic approach of the Global Fund when the support comes to countries, whereby countries are expected to generate what we call a kind of, well, not countries, but at the end of the day, well, Global Fund comes with what we call the investment case, whereby on how demands are created at country level, then from there also to make sure there is enough resources to address those gaps. Well, have resources have been enough so far in terms of addressing the Global Fund needs? Well, that's a question mark. However, in terms of the approach, it has been very much centered also on the demand that countries put as part of their grant cycle. So very much so, it very much builds on the demands, on the needs at country level. It very much also goes into what we call the needs that come from key and vulnerable population. There is also a constituency called country coordinating mechanism at each country, whereby these country coordinating mechanisms also have their consultations with grassroots communities, with key population, with affected communities. And from there also will come with those demands that at the end of the day will be presented to the Global Fund. And of course, the board will decide on how those will be executed. So in terms of the approach, I would say the country approach has really helped, one, to kind of bring context to the different problems we have in Africa. We're 55 member states. That's a lot of country in one continent. However, it means also that the challenges are also very much different in each country. They're not the same. In Ethiopia, the second populous country, we have numerous challenges in health systems, numerous challenges in addressing HIV, TB, malaria. And next to Ethiopia, we have Djibouti, one of the smallest countries, which definitely doesn't really have the same burden as Ethiopia. So the approach of having that country approach will very much also support in terms of bringing context to the fight that we're bringing, which is a very critical element in our advocacy moving forward. If I answered your question, Jennifer.
Thank you. I think that stands in really stark opposition to the idea that many people have that aid or the money that UK can contribute to these global efforts is somehow parachuted in and is our priorities. And I love the way the Global Fund doesn't do that, but it's responsive to countries' investment needs and also working with grassroots organizations and marginalized communities, as you mentioned. So I think that's something that really stands in opposition to some of the erroneous narratives of how ODA can work. Let's move on to our third question, which should come from our online group.
Yep, me. Thanks very much, Fitsum, for coming along tonight. It's very kind of you. What else do countries around the world need to do to strengthen their health systems?
Thank you very much, Richard. It goes back to the kind of the element I touched on country context on the second question from Jennifer. The need of countries should be defined in approach whereby civil society, communities, including private sector, sits around on a table, and from there also kind of genuinely understand the problems and also what short-term and long-term priorities that we need to address. Speaking as the African Union Liaison Manager, we have different policy instruments on the continent to address health systems and also to contribute to the fight against HIV, TB, and malaria. We have this very kind of a mature commitment, let me use that word, which was adopted in 2001. We call it the Abuja 15% target, whereby all member states of the African Union agreed to allocate at least 15% of their national budget to health, which during the same year, it was also declared that HIV, TB, and malaria is also an emergency on the continent. However, looking at the Africa Union scorecard of 2024, we only have one country who has accepted or respected that commitment, South Africa. And within that line, we also have other financial commitments. We have the 5% GDP target. It's a Chatham House recommendation, which the 5% should at least kind of address the basic minimum packages of health services. And we have what we call the per capita allocation. It's a WHO recommendation, which states that at least there should be $86 per capita, which very much also then draws on the context which I've been trying to address. So addressing these commitments is very much crucial. One, should be a process of revision. We have a commitment which was made in 2001. We are in 2025. Then is it still relevant? Should we revise it? Should we leave it as it is and still wait for member states to address that? Then it goes back to the kind of narrative I brought earlier, comparing Djibouti and Ethiopia. Ethiopia, one of the top 5 GDPs on the continent. When you look at the numbers, it might make some sense, but then when you come to the population, we're almost 135 million on the continent. Then you have Djibouti next door, was relatively smaller GDP, smaller population. However, in terms of allowing these two countries to run on the same indicator wouldn't be fair at the end of the day, because one of the countries can easily address that. And 14% for Ethiopia and maybe 20% for Djibouti is not something that you can easily compare. So it's really to go back to the regional policy commitments and to see how those are addressing this. Then that would touch upon the global commitments, for example, SDGs and the Global Fund itself very much, whereby then how do these policy instruments, these policy frameworks also are in terms of reading to each other to these global commitments. For example, Global Fund sets that for an effective domestic resource mobilization, there should be a 20% of tax to GDP ratio collection. What does that mean to countries like Ethiopia, where the tax to GDP ratio is very low? Then as much as we're also working on the national and regional policy instruments, we should be also very mindful of the global commitment. So when the Global Fund is suggesting that 20% of the GDP ratio should be coming from tax, and if Ethiopia is still remaining on 10%, then we're not really looking into a very sustainable graduation from the Global Fund. Because at the end of the day, Global Fund might not be there forever, but countries will continue their fight against these three diseases and also looking into on how to strengthen. The other part would be the private sector engagement or private sector investment. Then how can we also pull private sector into the health system? Very much so, health is an investment. I believe we have understood that, especially after COVID. That is not a cost, or it's not something that we just allocate and see how the resources burned out. But to be more conscious about it, when every dollar is spent, to make sure that we collect at least a fair amount back in terms of healthy citizens. Then how also can we bring everybody on board? Civil society, community, development partners, and such. So countries should be very mindful, one, of their priorities, local priorities, should be very mindful of their context, and to also make sure that context is also addressing the milestone and approaches of global and regional policy targets. And from there also to have a peer learning mechanism in a way, whereby also one country learns from the next and also one region learns from the other. So definitely there is a lot we can learn from the United Kingdom, from England, in terms of health system strengthening, regional manufacturing of pharmaceuticals and such. Let me stop here.
Thanks, Fitsum. That's really comprehensive. And again, I really love the way that you've placed the work of the Global Fund within that broader context of African countries setting their own health priorities and having to do a whole load of other things to fund those, both from internal and external sources. So that's really helpful. I know a lot of people on this call will already know quite a lot about the Global Fund work, how the Global Fund works, and some people won't, and they'll be quite new to it. So I think now is a really great time to open the floor to kind of any questions that people have. So in the normal way, please just feel free to, open your mic and ask Fitsum a question. Please introduce yourself as you do so. Alternatively, you can type your question in the chat as normal, many people do, and I will read them out for those people who can't see that. And also, if you don't want to do any of those things, you can text me. And I've just put my number in the chat, which is 07906 662 571. That's 07906 662 571. So plenty of ways to get your questions to Fitsum. Over to you guys. Kathy had her hand up first.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's really, really interesting to hear right from Africa rather than discussing the Global Fund, which some of the health improvement. And when it was set up, it was between those diseases seemed at the time there was the effectiveness of the Global Fund. So I don't want it to be interfered with if it's just belittled. But is there a way that the Global Fund has where that
some whereby those priorities are also reflected. So definitely, as a civil society, we unless those demands come from country, unless those demands come from a specific group, then it will be very hard also to kind of address the issue. Needs attention. That there's no argument around that. However, the problem also goes back to countries. But I think there should be a bit more kind of affecting my community, affecting my people. Then from what has been given to me from the Global Fund, is then how should I prioritize between three diseases? I believe there should be that approach whereby countries also, to some extent, get the support of the country. And at the same time, to have the ability to address those, also setting priority at was very much critical for some in
demand side of things. But as an organisation that advocates on TB, of course, we have our concerns that are more global in terms of the global approach. There is a policy officer
Actually, last year, the Global Fund kind of commissioned an independent evaluation to look at how they could kind of address some of these issues. So the evaluation and malaria, and compared to the other two diseases, our mortality rate for TB has not been reduced as significantly as it has across HIV and malaria. And also they've got different tools to help them with some of those two diseases. And also with TB, obviously we have the added challenge that it causes drug resistance and the impact on antimicrobial resistance, which again has many kind of threats, and is influenced by climate change and other factors as well. So as a civil society, we did come together last year to try and address some of this from a global perspective. So the Stop TB Partnership generated a petition and we did some work with them. We also wrote some articles directly addressing this issue and to address the recommendations in the independent evaluation, which did recommend that TB should have a greater share of the funding. So what they did in the last replenishment, I think they have kind of mentioned a little bit in this one, is if we reach the full 18 billion in replenishment, additional money will then be given to TB. And it's a little kind of formula that they work out. So I won't go into all the details on that because it does get a little bit complex. But obviously in the last replenishment, they didn't get the full 18 billion that they're asking. So TB didn't get the additional uplift in funding. So we're hoping obviously that we can change that this time. But again, it's a very big challenge and it's a big battle that we're continuing to fight. I think the difference is that more people are speaking out about the inequitable disease split across all countries now, which is adding more pressure to the Global Fund for them to kind of change their disease formula and how they allocate the funding. And also more people are speaking out across implementing countries to say that where they need the funding actually is not kind of where the Global Fund kind of says it should be. So again, there is more advocacy happening in that space. So we will continue obviously to support implementing countries to bring about a change in the disease split. But let's see what happens in the replenishment later on this year as well. Thanks, Naveed.
Thanks, Hira. Thank you, Effortson. Thank you, Kathy, for your question, which I think has really put our experts on the spot there. So it is about, matching the need, but at the same time, obviously, we don't want to take away from the HIV response, which is super important as well. And, making sure that I think this just shows that, no global institution is perfect. And by working with them and speaking to them and having that dialogue at country level, we can improve things. So it really is a good example of how the Global Fund can work to improve itself incrementally. And I feel we can still, from the UK perspective, morally, if you like, argue for it as a good institution that's doing its best, doing a good job, but certainly there's a lot of room for improvement as well. A super important question. Anybody else with a question for Fitsum? We've got a few minutes left. I want to raise a question, if I can. Chairman's prerogative. Do I count as the chair? I don't know. I think I do. I'm going to claim I'm the chair. I believe that the replenishment conference, I don't think we have a date yet, but it's going to be co-hosted by South Africa and the UK. I don't know, Fitsum, if you've got any observations on that, or how those two countries working together can help bring the replenishment forward and help a range of different countries contribute. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Thank you very much, Naveed. It's a very interesting time to witness this replenishment. As you've rightly mentioned, it's going to be South Africa and UK hosting it. And at the same time, we have the G20, which is now under the presidency of South Africa, which I believe is also an added bonus, especially to bring more spotlight on the replenishment. Within the G20 also, I would like to remind you that the African Union is a +1 in that G20 as well, which I believe has also kind of now came up with a very strong demand on health. However, yeah, we can argue if the demand is also very much reflective of community needs. Today, our team leader, Rosemary Mburu, has traveled to South Africa because there is also another engagement that's being happening underway, which is also under the C20, the Civil Society 20. So from where we sit, very much I've been following the African Union engagement side. I have a colleague who's leading the South Africa engagement from Cape Town. It has been, we can do better, I believe. We can do better in terms of especially looking into the priorities in making sure that also African governments also are more vocal this time around, especially looking into the opportunity the G20 is bringing in addition to the hosting of the replenishment. There is a kind of a movement in terms of setting priorities, especially through the G20, which I believe also addresses kind of key elements of this replenishment, especially in terms of building the manufacturing capacity of the continent, and also making sure there is also a very strong health system, which is one of the contributing factors. But if I have more, definitely, I'll be very happy to send you via email. Thank you, Naveed.
Thank you, Fitsum. I mean, I think this partnership between the UK and South Africa could be really interesting. Great to hear that sort of African advocacy across the continent coordinating there. I kind of have a suspicion that the UK, when they get letters from campaigners, will be talking up how they're being part of the replenishment. At the end of the day, we need them to contribute financially as well. Again, Sahira or AXA, are colleagues on the call working on TB specifically. If either of you have got any observations on that you think you'd like to throw into the conversation, we've got about a minute left.
I think we'll leave it there, just that it's been a really great opportunity to work with South African civil society and across, not just South Africa, across other countries as well. And we're coming together as civil society to support the replenishment as well.
Thanks, Sahira. So I hope you can see that there's a kind of global concerted effort. We're sort of trying to help join up with Fitsum and other colleagues and make sure that what we're asking in the UK backs them up, essentially, and works as a globally coordinated whole. We don't know the money we're going to ask from the UK yet, as I said at the beginning, but we do know that we're going to help to make this replenishment, the best that we can do. So we've run out of time, I think, now, and it is very late in the day in Addis Ababa, so we do need to let Fitsum go. Fitsum, thank you so much for sharing that kind of very, very clear kind of African perspective, the country level perspective with us. I hope that helps people understand a little bit more, or remind yourselves a little bit more about how the Global Fund works to support countries. And good luck in your work, Fitsum, in support of that Global Fund's advocacy. We will be supporting you. We'll be standing with you, doing whatever we can from the UK. So please do feel free to leave us now and enjoy what little is left of your evening. We're going to finish the call.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody else as well for thank you in advance for everything that you can do to inform your MP about the work of the Global Fund. We've got a few months before that replenishment conference. So all of these new MPs that we've got, 330 something MPs in Parliament who are pretty new, they don't know the first thing about the Global Fund, obviously, the vast majority of them. So that's where we come in. And I'm just posting this month's campaign materials. Of course, you have them on email as well, as usual. So thank you, everybody. As usual, we'll keep this line open for up to another half hour after the end of the call, just in case anyone wants to chat. But if you're not staying for that, please enjoy the rest of your evenings. And yeah, lovely to see you all, as always.